Okay. All right, we're set. Okay, so today during setting expectations, this is actually a pretty quick module. But what we're going to do is we're going to learn the importance of setting expectations, and then we're also going to walk through how do you go about setting goals and expectations. Sometimes when we do training, we'll teach you all about why things are important, or but we won't necessarily teach you how to do certain things. That's one of the things we wanted to make sure that we did inside of this whole training curriculum, is not only teach you about things, but teach you how to do it. So as we go through this, the first thing is, why do we set expectations? Okay. Here you see a checklist of most leaders' worst fears. You have disengagement, you have turnover, you have conflict, you have poor results. What do you think could potentially be common in all of that? I encourage you to speak up. What do you think might be common in all of these fears?
To a certain extent, we have control over all of them.
Okay, you may have control over all of them. Good. Mark says there's conflict in all of them.
There's poor results.
There may be poor results in all of them. Yep.
They're all people issues that you have to deal with, not necessarily your issue, but people issues.
So they're all related to people.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes you'll find that if you have unclear or unmatched expectations at the root of most of your conflicts, this is going to be the result of it. Okay? If people don't understand what's expected of them, or they're not clear about what's expected of them, this is going to be your result. You're going to have disengaged workers, you're going to have conflict, you're going to have turnover, and ultimately you're going to have poor results. What we want to do is we want to stop this. We want to stop the insanity. We want to train you how you can greatly reduce the challenges that you'll face as a leader by setting crystal clear expectations in 4 areas. So the first area is in work. Okay? That's fairly basic, but people need to know exactly what's expected of them. They need, excuse me, most people think that the job description that they have is enough, but oftentimes there's going to be big gaps in this area. So closing those gaps are going to help improve things dramatically. They need to know how you personally, how you define success. They need to know what your boundaries are. They need to know the level of qualities that you expect. Okay, these are all questions that your employees face. So you need to set clear expectations with your team so that the right work gets done. The next one has to do with time. So let me ask you, if I said to you, I need this report by Thursday, what does that mean to you?
You need the report done by Thursday.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, that you need to get the report on Thursday, not that I need to start doing it on Thursday so I can give it to you.
Okay.
Well, I think the other question would be, if you say you need it on Thursday, my first question would be, okay, by what time do you need it on Thursday?
Bingo. Bingo,
Okay.
that's it. If I need it on Thursday, do I need it first thing on Thursday because I have a meeting at 10 o'clock? Do I need it by the end of day on Thursday because I have a meeting on Friday? So these are things that we need to be clear about as far as expectations. If I tell you I need something on Thursday and your thought is end of business on Thursday and 9:55 rolls around and I don't have that report for my 10 o'clock meeting, shame on me for not clarifying that expectation. There's bad things that can happen if you don't clarify the expectations regarding time with your people. The next area is culture. Okay, people bring their past experience and their habits to them on the job. So if those experience and those habits differ from the way that we do things around here, there's going to be mismatched expectations. These mismatches can lead to a perception that people aren't a good fit, It can cause an initial source of poor performance, either perceived or real, and it can be the root of interpersonal conflicts. So make sure that the organizational norms and the overall expectations are explained. People need to see that understanding and matching their behavior to the cultural expectations. While it may be more subtle than some other factors, it's very important to their success. I asked this question yesterday, and I'd like to see a show of hands. Has anyone seen the movie A Few Good Men? Okay, so it looks like most of you have seen A Few Good Men. For those of you who haven't, the movie is basically about it's set in the U.S. Marines, and there are 2 Marines that are on trial for the death of another Marine. And through this, there is a scene in a courtroom, and in that scene, another Marine is being asked about the Marine handbook. Okay, so everything in the Marines is very much by the book. There's a line in there that people follow orders or people die. So inside of it, there is a scene where one Marine is being questioned by one of the attorneys, and he said, he's handed the Marine code book, and he said, can you find in there a definition of code red? So code red is actually a cultural thing inside of the Marines where one Marine or 2 Marines will discipline another Marine without any orders. So it's kind of an underneath the table thing of self-discipline among the Marines themselves. So he's asked, look in the Marine manual and show me where it says code red. And he said, it's not in the manual. And then he's given the manual for Guantanamo Bay where this incident occurred. And he's asked, can you show me there where code red is? And he said, it's not in the handbook. Well, then how did you know to do it? How did you know about code reds if it's not in the Marine handbook? And he said, you just do. You just know about it. So things like that, actually the next scene is pretty good too. He's asked, do you know where the mess hall is? And he said, it's not in the handbook. Well, then, did they not feed you? And he said, well, of course they fed you. Well, then how did you know? He said, I just followed everybody else to the mess hall. So this is an example of culture and how there are things that are unwritten inside of your call centers likely where people may not necessarily understand the culture and they have to come to understand it. You need to be aware of that and don't initially jump to somebody is not a good fit. Their culture just may be slightly different. The last thing has to do with communication. The research will tell us that one of the top reasons for unhappiness in the workplace are communication issues with the manager or the supervisor. So very often managers will make incorrect assumptions that the employees have all the knowledge that they need without ever being told how things actually work. But if you ask the employees, they'll give you a completely different picture about what's expected of them. So due to this disconnect, the employee will fail to deliver. The manager will end up blaming the employee. There's resentment. There's continued poor performance. So communication is going to be critical to the organizational life, and it's very important. It's far too important to just leave to chance. So without setting clear expectations here, people will operate based on their own preferences and their own habits, and that may not meet the needs of the organization. So any questions before we get into how to set expectations?
No question.
Okay. So we'll move into the how aspect of it. So the first part is setting performance goals with individuals. All right. This one is relatively easy because in most cases it's fairly cut and dry. You know what your average handle time targets are. You know what you know about the attendance policy, things like that. So you want to make sure you review the individual performance goals with each of your team members. Be clear about them and be respectful. And also let them know how frequently you're going to be providing them with feedback. So again, they know what to expect from you. you want to tell the team what they can expect from you. So you want to share some of your background. You want to share your communication preferences. You want to encourage them to ask you clarifying questions. So remember what we said about culture? You also are going to bring your past to the party. So by sharing about yourself, you're going to let your team know a little bit about your background, about your perspective, and you'll also set the tone that it's safe for them to share within the team. So go ahead and I gave an example yesterday where, I'm the youngest of 8, and so in my family it's very busy and it can be very chaotic, but we're very close-knit family. So because of that, I value the team aspect of things, and I will generally use a team to assist me in reaching our goals. So I'm very team-oriented because of my background. I will share that with any employees that I have, just so again they get a feel for me and a little bit about my background. And then the last part has to do with paraphrasing. So you want to ask your team member to paraphrase what they heard when you're setting expectations with them. It's important that you test this understanding. When you ask them to paraphrase, you're solidifying their understanding, and you're setting your team up with clear direction on the road to give you great performance and great success. So you can do this by simply asking them if they understand, ask them to tell you what they heard so that you can make sure that you didn't miscommunicate. Okay? Any questions there?
No.
All right.
Well,
Sure.
No.
yes.
No question.
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
Could you go back to the slide?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. So how do you deal with a situation where you have, asked that they clarify to ensure that they understand and they don't want to?
And they don't want to?
Yes, after explaining a situation, and you want them to, as you mentioned, tell you in their own words if they understand what you just said. But they go, okay, yes, I understand. I don't need to do that. And, you know of situations prior where, you may have had the same conversations and it ended the same way, and they didn't understand. So how do you get them to talk?
So have you asked them to paraphrase?
Yes.
And did they?
No.
Okay, well then that's where the disconnect is happening.
Mm-hmm.
If I would be relatively direct with that. Now I want you to share back with me what you heard me say about expectations. And they should be able to say, we're actually going to do an exercise on this, but they should be able to tell you, my performance expectations are A, B, and C, and you prefer or you prefer to communicate via instant messenger and email, so I should expect that from you.
But now I have a
I would
question.
be pretty direct about asking them to paraphrase it if you definitely think that there is an issue with that with them.
Well, okay, so I have a question because she was saying that, if I understood correctly, that they were refusing to paraphrase it. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
So if they're refusing to paraphrase it, then why wouldn't you say something like, well, okay, let's go back to this experience because this is what I said when this happened, and you said that you understood then, and this is why this happened. So that's why I need to know if you understand exactly what I'm saying. So can you tell me what you understood about what I said? Couldn't you do something like that?
I would say yes. Yeah, I mean, that's the encouraging the clarifying questions. You just want to make sure that when that employee leaves that session that they understand. And if they don't understand what the expectation is, then that's on you.
Okay.
So you can't let them leave there without understanding what the expectation is. Whether that's encouraging clarifying questions or the paraphrasing, but if they say yes, that I understand, and they're not willing to go any further, well, then that's their acknowledgement that they understand. There's one thing that I want to say about this training. This training is very much about communication. It's about respect. It's about the best professional way to go about treating your employees. However, I don't want this training to come across as we are going to babysit people and we're going to let them get away with things because we're just going to be so respectful for that. You know, everything needs to be respectful, but by the same token, you have a business to run. So, you know, when you get that acknowledgement from them about expectations, they are grown adults, and they have to take responsibility and accountability for saying, yes, I understand the expectation.
Okay, and I understand because just to add, Mary, at times trying to get them to talk may actually cause an issue. So their refusal to say something and you wanting them to say something sometimes develops into something else, which, you know, totally takes you away from the direction that you are trying to go in, if you understand.
Okay, no, I definitely understand because, and actually you're bringing something up that I don't think we considered in this overall training. So not necessarily for today. I mean, today we're gonna talk about coaching and about active listening and things like that. But I think one thing that we may have overlooked, and I'm going to add to this training curriculum, was how do you control a conversation? You know, what are the skills that you need so that you are able to do exactly what you're saying? You know, if somebody is unwilling to participate, or if they are overtaking the conversation. I don't think that we've gotten enough into how do you as a supervisor control that conversation with your employees. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I've made a note of it to make sure that we do include this in the curriculum moving forward. Lisa, you have a question or a comment?
I have a comment on the question that you just asked. I feel that to get an agent to open up and have them communicate to you in a way that they understand is that every day have that communication going on with them. Having them talk to you in a way if it's nothing but about what's going on an account, asking them how their day is, things of that nature, getting them comfortable enough with you where they can open up to you, and that way when you deliver certain expectations to them and you're making sure that you have that clarification there for them, they will do what you have iterate for them to be done.
That is an excellent point. You're a supervisor. You have the most difficult job in the business, I believe. You have communication with your agents. You have communication with your operations managers. Being a supervisor is all about relationships. It is all about building relationships, and that's an excellent point. And Pam, I know you're of the same vein. You know that it's all about getting out there with your people. You need to get out there. You need to get out and say good morning to them. You need to get out in the afternoon and wish them a happy, a good weekend on a Friday. That is the most important and most constructive thing that you can do is just get out there, talk to your people. It doesn't always have to be coaching. It doesn't always have to be feedback. You need to build a relationship with your employees. So, and this setting expectations aspect, this is just the first part of it. You know, it's if you have a new employee and you're trying to get them accustomed and onboarded to your way of working, this is where this setting expectations comes into play. So I'm glad we're having this conversation because that's super important. Is that relationships are what this whole job is about.
Okay,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay, so I know this could go on and on for a while. I just wanted to make one last point, if I might.
Sure.
Just to add, I have agents, that I communicate with, we will talk about the weather and everything else. However, when it comes to one-on-one, I mean, we'll be laughing and, having a good time. However, when it comes to business, meaning, one-on-one, for example, and they sit in front of you, and you start a conversation regarding their quality, their overall performance, sometimes they tend to shut down because they may not agree necessarily with your outlook on their performance. You may show them pointers and say, well, I think you're not performing in this area, and here are my reasons. And they'll go, no, I don't think so. I think you're wrong. Yes, that may be your opinion, and, I understand. However, based on the stats, what you are doing, what I'm showing you, I know I'm correct. And they just tend to shut down because they are of the opinion that they are correct and you are wrong. And, as I said, these are persons that when we're not talking about their quality, we communicate, we laugh, we talk. However, they shut down when it comes to, a discussion regarding their performance because they're of the opinion that what they are doing is correct and what you're saying isn't.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you if you would to hold off on that until we get through the session, because this portion is just about the setting expectations.
Okay.
The whole rest of the day is going to be on coaching, and we're going to get into different means by which you can coach. So we're going to get into different models. We're going to get into different approaches. So I would ask if you could potentially just hold on that, and I'm going to put it in the parking lot so that we make sure we do cover it, but I would just ask that you hold it until later on in the day.
Understood.
Mary, before we close that, but, I always thought the first thing that I did every morning, it's been 6-7 years ago since I had a staff that I had to go out and deal with, but I would always, first thing I would do was put my purse down, not open up my email and start work, was to walk out, go by the manager's office and circle the floor just to say, hey, good morning. Wasn't to ask them to do anything, but to see who's absent, who's there, what's going on, what is the call volume looking like, what is the work looking back, what volumes do we have, and then kind of circle. And then other things you can do is don't sit with your own personal peers at lunch. Try mingling. Sit down at different tables during lunch break. And then you'll be surprised how the conversations come up and your staff learn to be comfortable with you. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, that plays right into the idea of just building relationships. So you are going to have difficult times when you're providing feedback or when you're coaching.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about that. But again, so if we can go through the setting expectations aspect, and we most certainly will get to this when we get to the coaching module. So I'm going to move into an exercise. I'm going to ask for 2 volunteers, if you'd be kind enough to raise your hands. It's not terrible, and it's different volunteers from the emails I sent earlier. All right, Sam is one, and can I get another? I'm going to have to use a randomizer. All right, Lulu, thank you. All right, so Sam and Lulu are going to be our volunteers. One of you is going to act as the supervisor, and you're setting expectations. So don't think of it, this is not a coaching session necessarily. You are setting initial expectations. So who would like to be the supervisor, Sam or Lulu?
I have no preference. I can be the supervisor.
Okay. All right, so Sam, you're going to be and Lulu, you're in the room. That's right. Okay, so Sam, you are going to be the supervisor, and Quintavious is going to be the agent. So what I would ask you to do is, Sam, as the supervisor, go through and tell Quintavious what you expect. Share your background, share your communication preferences, encourage clarifying questions. And then Quintavious, when he's done, I would like to hear you paraphrase it, but treat it as a conversation you're having with one another. And then everybody who else is listening in, listen in, hear how it goes, and we're going to provide feedback when it's over. So go ahead and start.
Okay. Real quick before I start, with the share background, just kind of in general, just make, sorry, 1 second. Sharing background on any specific thing, or just kind of going?
You're just having a conversation with Quintavious. So you're just sharing a little bit of background about yourself. So you're setting expectations with him.
Perfect. All right. Hi, Quintavious. I just want to talk to you a little bit about myself and setting some expectations on how we want to work together here. So just a brief bit about me is I've been working in leadership roles here in Xerox for about 8 years in various roles, and I really do like to maintain a strong communication. My preferences are generally face-to-face because it does let us have the most opportunity to fully flesh out conversations and clarify as needed. Email is a good backup method if we need to have additional points or have have something on the record. And that's basically my expectation. Do you have any questions for me on my preferences or anything like that?
Well, you mentioned by email, so that will be the secondary option if we're not able to meet face-to-face. Would that be something that's done every day? Do I have to expect emails to be sent out every day from you, or as far as the expectations for that day, or is it going to be daily, weekly, or monthly?
That's a good question. As far as email, it would be an as needed. I would say that email is, you can use email as needed on any given time because it is a good written record if you want to refer back to it in the future. In terms of daily emails, that wouldn't be necessary unless there was something you specifically wanted documented.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Tim.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well done. Okay, group, what do you think? How did it go?
I thought it went well, but one thing that I missed in there when he said emails, he said it's not necessarily every day. It's something you might think needs to be documented. Would it have been a good idea to give some examples of what you believe would be a good option for emailing, or things that you thought would be things that you should bring directly to me? So that's my thought initially from the conversation.
Okay, well, it was a good conversation. However, initially I thought it came off a bit one-sided. I know, it was a conversation. I didn't hear the other person being given opportunity to, say something. It just felt a bit one-sided until the end of it. So it felt more like me telling you, that this is what you need to do, as opposed to us, me telling you and us arriving at a decision regarding whatever we're talking about.
Okay, so you bring up a good point, and we're going to get into that later on today. But there are times, and setting expectations is one of those, when you are the one that's giving the direction. Okay, there are, these are the expectations performance-wise. It's A, B, and C, and then this is what you can expect from me as far as communication. So in a setting expectations type of discussion, it is going to be relatively one-sided. You as a supervisor, you as a leader, you are setting those expectations. You are taking the lead in this conversation. But we are definitely going to get into the different types of coaching and the applicability of those depending on the conversation later on today. So that's a great add. Any other comments?
Well, this is Quintavious. I just wanted to provide feedback as far as the paraphrasing question. Well, pretty much Sam, he's been employed for over 8 years in various roles. His strongest communication preferences is in person, face-to-face, and also by email if he's not available at that time for any questions. We will have to just refer back to the email, and he will give me a response at his earliest convenience. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else want to give it a try? All right. I'm not going to force you to.
Hello?
Yes.
The only thing that I would add, and I always try to keep in my agent's ear, is to remind them of the expectations of being here on time, and also that if they're not going to be here, the importance of making sure that they call in. That's very important so that we can manage our staff.
Okay, good. Good point. Yeah, and this exercise is really more driven toward the background and clarifying questions type piece of it. But yes, absolutely. When you do have the expectation setting, there are most likely going to be specific things that you want to key on.
Mary, one thing that I always like to do when I'm talking, even now, I like to convey that I'm a little bit of a hands-on person, and I like to understand what is going on in all of the areas. Mm-hmm. So I like timely reporting when issues are out there, and when I would talk about those expectations, when I needed to see them, and how important it was to have them come in when the due date is there. I also would emphasize that this is me on my personality. I would just emphasize that, hey, I'm very open. I'm not always right. I'd like to hear your feedback. So if I give a directive or suggest something, if there are things that you don't agree with, let's be open about it, and we can talk about it and agree, and that my door is open at all times.
That's a perfect example. That is a perfect example of sharing a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, about your communication preferences, about your style, your leadership style. That's exactly what people need to look for. That's a great example. Thank you. Okay. All right. So this is going to summarize this setting expectations. Like I said, it's a relatively quick module. But the things you want to keep in mind are that, people are going to operate and perform based on their view of the world. Everybody has a history. Everybody has, baggage, if you will. And if we don't set clear expectations with them, they're going to create their own view. So we have to really be diligent about setting those clear expectations so that we can eliminate some of the issues that may occur down the road. The more time you spend on setting clear expectations, the better employee sat you'll have, the more engaged workforce you'll have. You'll have reduction in workplace conflict, and overall you're going to have better performance if you set those expectations up front. So are there any questions on setting expectations before we move into coaching?